Created equal, this is true. Oh yeah, that's good and evil. Who are you? The sun, it shines on everyone. Yes, it does. There's a million stars. Reach for one every city.
Hello, welcome to this edition of Cops Corner. I'm Preston James, and today we're going to talk about financial crimes. And to help me talk about the financial crimes, we have Investigator Duane Smith from the Urbana Police Department. Welcome, Duane.
Glad to be here.
All right, so Duane, you work for the Urbana Police Department in the Investigations Division, correct?
That is correct.
All right, how long have you been with the City of Urbana?
I've been with the City of Urbana, it'll be 19 years in a couple of weeks.
19 years, man, you almost at that big 20.
Yes.
Wow, okay, that's a lot of time, man. I got, my kids not that old, they're old, they act like they're old, right? During this episode, we're gonna talk about the different things like credit card fraud, people calling you to get information from your credit card, get information saying that they're IRS and type of things like that, right?
That's correct.
All right, so can you give us a brief definition of what solicited scams and frauds are?
Sure. So a solicited scam or fraud is any time the victim or would-be victim is contacted by the offender or someone representing the offender for the purpose of gaining information needed to steal money from you. So, and the contact can come through, it could be in person, it could be through social media, it could be through a text, it could be through an email, any way, any mode of communication can be used, or even through snail mail can be used to make contact with a would-be victim to trick them into giving a critical piece of information that will be needed to get money.
Now, what's snail mail?
Snail mail is the regular old U.S. Postal Service mail.
Okay.
Correspondence that has the stamp on it that you just get through at your mailbox through the slot in your door. And
it takes a while. That's why it's called snail mail.
Exactly.
Instead of instant, which we have over the internet now, emails and so forth. Okay, so you gave me a few different options, a few different things that people can fraud you on. There's some other type of frauds, like saying you won the lotto and things like that. Can you give me a few more so people, our audience, can kind of be aware of what type of calls we receive?
All right, so yeah, there's a lottery, publishers, clearinghouse, any type of known programs out there where you can actually win something. Mm-hmm. And then the fraud is, hey, you won something, but before you can receive the winnings, you must pay the taxes on that.
Right.
And so because they are promising you a large sum of money, and and you're going to pay them such a relatively small amount of money in taxes,
right.
It kind of takes advantage of people who are down on their luck, right. And been waiting for that big break, and here it is. So people want to believe, and offenders prey on the needy or those who are struggling financially because this appears to them to be, this is that big break in life I've been looking for.
We've, back when I worked for the police department prior to retiring back in February, the type of people I would get them from were our elderly, the ones who are, they're more trusting of people. When they grew up, they were taught to trust, be polite, be respectful. A little different than our younger generation now, but the older people, that's how they were brought up. So they're more apt to agree and don't want to feel like they did something wrong, right? So has that been your experience as well, part of the elderly?
Absolutely. They are your most vulnerable victims out there because all you have to do is usually present them with just a few small facts about themselves, and that validates the credentials, if you will, of the offender, you know, because a lot of our elderly citizens don't understand just how much information, personal information about them and their families are available freely to everyone through Facebook and all social media. And so whereas an elderly person would think, well, but he knows the name of my husband.
Right.
He knows my age. He knows my address. He knows the address I lived at 10 years ago.
Right, right.
They take this as, well, this has to be a credible source. This has to be someone associated with the government. They're the only people that would know all this information about me.
Right.
So they don't recognize that, but no, a criminal can get this information quite easily about you. And so they are tricked because they are presented with a few true facts about themselves and their lives. And in their minds, this is validation that this has got to be legit because they know too much about me.
Right.
And we, part of what we're doing here today is trying to educate people. You can't trust any of this information that's being presented to you. You need to listen, be polite if you choose,
Correct.
hang up if you want,
Right.
but then verify. Verify independent of what you're hearing from this unknown person on the phone or text message or whatever the mode is. Verify independently what this person is saying.
We kind of breached on that. This is the second time. If you're going to verify, what are some type of modes we can use to verify, the methods?
You can use the internet. The most important thing in verifying is never use any telephone number, email address, website that the caller has given you.
Right.
That's a trick too.
Absolutely.
People are out there creating false websites. They are creating false email addresses. For example, someone can identify themselves as Steve Jones with the IRS. And whereas a government IRS email address might be stevejones@irs.gov,
Right.
a fake email address can be made by anyone and it'll say irsgov.com.
Right. Right.
But people see the IRS and the GOV and say, that's the IRS. No,
Right.
they've just slightly changed the email address, but it's not going to the federal government. This
Right.
email and this information is going to a private citizen who has just created a derivative of a legitimate email address. And if you're not paying really close attention,
Right.
you would think that's a legit email address.
Absolutely.
But it's not. And so that's just never use the phone numbers, email addresses, or websites given to you by the person you suspect might be defrauding you.
You should write it down.
Yes.
Just to have a record of it in case something else goes wrong.
And it'll help me if you write it down.
Absolutely, and that's what I was about to get
yeah.
to. So if they have that information, if they see the number, let's say they got the call and they see the number on the caller ID, they should write that number down, write down at least the name of it and the time that they called, and when they come and present evidence to you, let's say they were half asleep, woke up and hadn't heard this, episode yet, and gave them more information than they should have. What should they bring a person like you? I mean, because it's not necessarily maybe you, but maybe another officer at the front desk or somebody. What type of information should they provide?
Give us everything that you remember about the contact. Describe the conversation, the type of questions they asked you. What type of background noises did you hear? I mean, did you hear a lot of noise, like a lot of other voices in the background? Did it sound like a warehouse? These are kind of typical of scams. A lot of the scams, we have huge call centers that are based out of foreign countries. You have India, Pakistan, some countries in Africa, They have huge buildings filled with people, and their job is to make these what we call cold calls. They get lists of phone numbers some way, somehow, and their job is just to call people cold and run the script for whatever that fraud is, that scheme, and just try to get as many people to bite on it as they can. So every question that they asked you, if you can remember, did it have an accent? Was it a male? Was it a female? What information, true information, did they have about you?
Right.
If they presented any information, personal information about you. All of that helps us piece together where this scam is oriented from. What are they asking you to send as payment? Where do they want you to send it to? Who do they want you to address it to? All of these pieces of information can be critical to helping us solve the case.
Absolutely, that's excellent information. So we talked about the information that we're supposed to give the police department. We actually kind of talked about how we stop them, how we keep from giving them information. There's a few different websites out there I know that has a lot of information about people. That could be one of the first steps. I think it's one of them called peoplesearch.com. I looked on that one, and it had my name, where I lived, my mother's name, my wife's name. It had my brother's. I mean, it had everybody that was attached to me. And I guess it's legal for it to be out there, but you have to go on those sites and request for it to be removed. So those are, look for those type of things as well to try to minimize your exposure.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, but bear in mind, if that information was ever out there about
Right.
you, even if you ask it to be removed, it's still out there.
It's still out there,
some
absolutely.
Someone may have recorded it, and it is nothing on the internet really ever dies, is kind of a motto that we know in law enforcement, and that
Right.
we want everyone in the public to know, is that once you push send, and once that information is out there in the world about you, no matter what steps you take to try to minimize it, to have it deleted, to have it removed, it's still out there in some form, shape, form, or fashion.
Right.
And
Right.
so your identity is out there, and that's just an unfortunate, unforeseen problem with the internet and social media, that when this World Wide Web thing first came into fruition and
Right.
everyone thought it was great,
Instant
these are
information,
one of the significant problems with that people did not quite understand at the time, that we've just we've made the world so much smaller through the internet, and information about ourselves is so much closer to the fingertips of friends and bad guys alike.
Absolutely. Well, Duane, I have to say I've learned actually more information here today than the time I've spent in my 11, 12 years in law enforcement. So is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to cover about solicited fraud before we close this episode and lead into the next one?
Just a few words of wisdom that everyone should just, I think, employ. And I think everyone knows this stuff. But like I said before, some of our most vulnerable people, citizens, are the ones who are more easily persuaded to ignore what we all know,
Right.
From a common sense perspective to be true. So that is, no one gives you money for free.
Right.
If you did not play the lottery, you probably did not win the lottery.
Right.
And verify any and everything. If anyone is asking you, if anyone's claiming that you're in trouble with the DEA, the FBI, the IRS, your child is in jail, your grandchild is in jail, independently confirm, verify that stuff without using any of the contact information the scammer gave to you.
Right.
Go on the internet to do a fresh search for Cook County Jail.
Right.
So if your grandson supposedly is in the Cook County Jail needing you to bond him out for $5,000 with iTunes gift cards,
Right. Right. First off, that's not
contact Cook County.
that's
Sheriff's
not an
Office.
acceptable means of payment, right?
Exactly.
But or call the parents or a sibling or something, right?
And let's just put that out there. Let's repeat that again.
iTunes cards.
iTunes cards will never be requested by the IRS, Cook County Sheriff's
right.
Office. No legitimate business
No.
is going to want you to pay them in iTunes cards.
Right.
Those cards get sent, 90% of them get sent overseas.
Right.
Because it is, for whatever, it's a high commodity item the world over.
Right. So yeah, that's definitely a lot of information. I believe it's a lot of great information for all ages, whether you're up on your luck, down on your luck, elderly, young. Knowing about financial crimes is very important because they don't have to come knock at your door.
That's correct.
They can reach out and steal from you from a distance.
And that's what makes this crime so popular. That's why it's the fastest growing segment of crime in America, is because people can do it from the comfort of their home, through their cell phone, and it gives you so much anonymity, and it makes it, and it's very difficult for us to catch the offenders.
Right. Well, Duane, I want to thank you for coming on today. I know we have another episode which is covering the unsolicited portion of our financial crimes. So thank you for watching this episode of Cops Corner. We'll have Investigator Smith back on for our next episode, which will include the unsolicited portion of our financial crimes. Until then, God bless and be safe.
All the